B&W spark plugs, you're gonna want the wobble socket. It's a 14 millimeter. I believe this is 12 splines. This is the only thing that's gonna go in there and let you remove those spark plugs. All right, so I'm gonna start over on cylinder 5. Make sure that you get in there and you get a nice grip and pop it out. They're not on tight, so no reason for you to actually use a power tool. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the other two and pull them all out and show you what they look like. Hopefully they're not all fouled up from the contamination that I think came from the coolant tank. Unfortunately, you can't take the 97506 spark plugs out of the box and just drop them into the engine. They have to be gapped to 0.022. The best way to do that is with a feeler gauge and then a spark plug gap compressor. You can get these on Amazon, they're like 16 bucks. So what you do is set your spark plug in here. You use this right here to tighten it up to close the gap. More pressure you put on it, but you want to periodically be checking with your feeler gauge. Now your feeler gauge is all in millimeters or decimal points, right? So on this point right here, I'm looking at 0.23, 0.05. We need to find 0.022. And so I see it right here. I'm gonna bring that out. And I've already got these off camera, but I'm gonna show you the clearance you have. So you wanna go in there, put it in between, and say you have no space, that's where you wanna be, 0.22. Of course, we're not robots, so there's gonna be a little bit of slight, but you wanna be right there in that ballpark. So this right here is 0.022. And then we'll go ahead, put this into the engine, and then we'll torque it down to, I believe it is 22 Newton meters, but I like to go a little bit higher because these engines run hot. All right, so good thing about this tool is the spark one is magnetic. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip in our spark plugs. We're gonna get them all started by hand, and then we'll come back and we'll torque them down after the fact. All right, so I have my digital torque meter set down to 22 Newton meters, and let me go ahead. I thought I would go a little bit higher, but nah, I'm just gonna keep it at the 22. Sometimes 23 is where I wanna be. All right, so we got all the spark plugs in there. They're all torqued down. Now we're gonna go ahead and install our injectors. Now, controversy is that the EU6s need to be programmed, but I'm here to tell you that from the 2019 to present, the S63TU4, these injectors require no programming at all. The DME is from Bosch and FCP Euro says that they are smart enough that the DME is actually going to adapt to the settings of the injector and the flow rates here. So I'm going to go ahead and install cylinder 5 and 6 and try to get you a shot of 7 and 8, but you probably don't even need it. It's going to be all the same. Now, I want you to remember though that all the injectors are going to be on the 2 o'clock angle, and you'll see what I mean when I install the first one. Gonna get it in there, and then we're just gonna go ahead and push down on them. Now, probably leaving out something that's a little bit vital, but the controversy is that I actually put a little bit of silicone on the Teflon seal in order to get it in there nice and smooth. I don't want to roll the Teflon gasket because that'll be a bad day, and these injectors will just leak, and then you have to do this all over again. So let's go back in now to cylinder 6, and we're gonna go ahead and put it on 2 o'clock. And if 2 o'clock is something, remember, you still can go ahead and rotate these around a little bit until we get our brackets, but you can see right now they're on the 2 o'clock angle. Like I said, cylinder 7 and 8 is going to be a little hard to see, but trust, you're going to repeat the same process. And 2 o'clock angle, you're going to push down, and you can actually feel when it seats in there. All right, so we have all the injectors in there, and you can actually see that they're actually pointing in the 2 o'clock position. When we go ahead and we put our brackets on, we're gonna actually align those up a lot more, but this is how you get started. So after you get your special tool back onto your injectors, these are gonna be torqued down to 13 Newton meters, which is about 9 foot-pounds, I believe. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put on our brackets that go, our hold down brackets that go on the injectors. And remember what I said earlier, you're gonna sit there and look at it because it has a nice little camber over here. You're gonna need a 10 millimeters to put the hold down bolt in there, but let's go ahead and do this over here. All right, so I'm gonna make sure that you are seated and that the brackets are actually going over the square slots. Go ahead and put your hold down bolt in, tighten it up by hand a little bit. Now these are going to be tightened down to the 13 Newton meters, same as the injectors themselves. So we got the injector bracket down. I don't want you to tighten it right now because we're going to have to go ahead and align our fuel rail in there. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that everything lines up finger tight a little bit. And once you have everything seated where it needs to be, then you come along and you start to torque down your injector bracket. Because if you tighten these injector brackets down first, the fuel rail will never fit on. We have the fuel rail nuts finger tight to the injectors themselves, here, 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 and there. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put these 3 hold down bracket bolts to our fuel rail. So there's one here, here, and then there's one further back. All right, so we got the fuel rail finger tight, we got the brackets finger tight, and now we're gonna go ahead and put the 3 bolts that hold the fuel rail to the block. We're gonna torque these down to 8 Newton meters, and this is gonna be in 3 spots. One here, here, and then the further one back over there. We have the fuel rail bolts torqued down. We're gonna go ahead and torque down the injector tie down brackets. These are 13 Newton meters. We are now at the point where we're going to torque down our fuel rails nuts to the injectors. These are torqued down to 10 Newton meters. Number 5. We do have one final connection on the fuel rail itself that needs to be put in place. You remember earlier in my video where I spoke about this connector right here? You actually had to push it out and then squeeze on the tab. Well, that's going to go at the back of the fuel rail to allow it to get the signal. That part is going to connect right here. So make sure you put that back in place. We have the connector on, and I just want to show you this because this is very important. I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna push the connector on until I hear an audible click, and then I'm going to slide that gray tab forward so that we actually lock it in place. So I'm gonna come in here, you're gonna push, you hear that click, and you see the gray is still pushed up. Now I'm gonna go in there and push that down, hear another click, and now that is perfectly seated onto the connector to the fuel rail, and we are done with that. Wanted to actually bring to attention this connector piece right here for our injector. As you can see here on the injector, we have that slot opening, and on our injector harness itself, you will sit there and notice that there's a little tab on there. I don't think that this will actually go in without it actually going into the slot itself, but you can't really see it because we have the injectors into the banks, well, into the cylinders now. But just be mindful that I'm going to show it on the old injector that this piece slides onto it and then it connects in from there. What we did was we loosely put the injector and coil harness into place. Haven't tightened anything down yet. What we're gonna do is make sure that we have all of our injectors actually clipped in. And I'm gonna start over here on cylinder 5. You're gonna go in there, you're gonna make sure you got everything lined up. You're gonna push down, and when you hear a click, you got it in place. I've installed cylinder 8 and cylinder 7 ignition coils. I still kept this harness loose so that we have wiggle room to go ahead and fit them in. Now, when you're fitting these coils in, it's really hard to kind of get it wrong. So you see right over here on this slot over here, you see how that part is facing that way? So the one in the front will face that way, the one in the back the ones in the back will face this way. Make sure that you have your clip extended all the way up, and then go ahead and slip your connector in. While you're slipping your connector in, this thing will want to fold over on you. That's telling you you have a good connection going on, and then you finally just do your final clamp and it'll be over. But yeah, leave everything loose. We're not pushing anything down. Get the connector in place, and then go ahead and push your ignition coil into the slot. So we finally reached a point now where we can actually put on our T30 bolts for our wire harness. These are the ones that go right. There's one here. Just put that guy in. One further in the back, and then I'm going to show you to put on your grounding straps right here. There's a little trick in here because I swear I think some of you will drop this bolt. Now the only thing left is to actually put on our nut for our grounding straps. I've heard really bad things happens if you don't have it grounded out properly, including actually blowing in your DMEs. Now, because these nuts are, let me put that into focus. It's only an 8mm nut. It's very small and easy to just drop out of here. So what you do is you put it on the end of your magnet, you get it into your spot, and it might take a little bit of fumbling around, but use your magnet as a screwdriver to help you get you started with that nut. We're at the final stages of completing bank 2 for the injectors, spark plugs, and ignition coils. As you can see, I put the coolant tank back where it was. These right here are 2 torque 30s. They're not torque healed. Probably are torque healed, but you can just go ahead and run this by hand. Put your hoses back where they were, your wiring harness clips on where they were. You're gonna go ahead and reinstall your DME and your airbox. I'm not doing that in this video because I am sending out my DMEs to be unlocked by Femto. I'm going to be running a stage 2 boot mod tool on this one, so I don't want to install them to take them off again to do it again. I'm going to save that up for a follow-up video. But what I'm going to do is move over to bank 1 to show you how to remove the ignition coils and just the spark plugs. We're not going to do injectors on that side because that side is not the problem child. So stay tuned. Let's go over and get on that side. So now we are on the passenger side. I didn't show the removal of the airbox or the turbo inlets. Like I said, I'm running the Dinan ones, but I'm going to show you the passenger side DME removal. We're going to go ahead and start by pushing on our tabs. Hear your click and get that. Just keep click. And we're going to go ahead and just remove these first, and then we'll get to the ones that's over there in the back as well. Now, for the connections that are over here along this side, they have those gray tabs. You have to come in with your pick tool. Make sure you pull them up. And they're all pretty much like that too. Even the one back here, you're gonna see a red clip, and you're gonna pull that up. And there's one on this side, you're gonna pull up. Once you have that pull up, you can actually squeeze onto it, and that will start to allow you to remove these pieces as well. Wanted to bring you in for a closer look on how we're gonna actually go about removing this. So you can see right here, I have one more tablet that, or a clip that has to come up. So again, it's just to bring that up. Then we have a 10 millimeter back there. We also have to separate that clip right there. And we have a grommet piece here that has to get removed along too with this 10 millimeter. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those pieces off, and then I'll start to remove the DME. Now that we have all of the wiring looms separated from the DME itself and the two 10 millimeter bolts that were actually mounting it, we should be able to just pull this right out, which will give us further access to our ignition coils so we can get to our spark plugs. Like I said, I'm not going to be reinstalling it in this video. I have future plans for this. We still need a little bit more access to get into further into removing the ignition coils and the spark plugs. One is the two 13 millimeter bolts that's holding the second reservoir can inside on top. So we're gonna just go ahead and take these two guys off. That way we can move the entire piece out of the way to let us get to our wiring harness. And from the wiring harness, we'll be able to get more access around our ignition coils, because right now you're not going to be able to get in there. You can see, go ahead and pop this guy, put him off to the side somewhere. So now that we have the expansion tank, the second expansion tank lifted off to the side, I always like to put a little bungee cord onto it. But what that does is that exposes us to those two nuts right there. We're only going to take off this one, and that's going to effectively let our wiring loom hang down so that we can get more room to actually get around the ignition coil so we can pop them out. So now that we have our ignition coil harness loom here actually loose, it allows us to now lift up on the ignition coil, push the connector out. You want to do that for all of them. Get it up, push the connector out, and continue that on through the next 4. And then from there, you should be able to just pop these guys right out. And boom. All right, so we are ready to start to remove the spark plug out of cylinder 1. Remember, you have to use your wobble socket, thin wall, at least a 17 spline, or sorry, 12 spline. And we're gonna go in there and remove it. And you always remove spark plugs by hand. Take them out by hand, put them in by hand. Yeah. Repeat the process on cylinder 2, 3, and 4. And that's it. We have our NGK 97506s. As I said in my last video, these have already been torqued down to 0.022. And now we're just gonna go ahead and put them into the cylinder head. And remember, you go ahead and you put these in by hand. So they're finger tight, and then we're gonna come back later and use our torque wrench to get them to our 22 Newton meters. So now we are going to torque this down to 22 Newton meters. put the connector into the ignition coil, you're gonna push it all the way through. And as you see it start to slightly come down, that's when you're gonna actually close in the clamp. And then you push that down into your slot. All right, so before we actually put our reservoir on, we have to tighten up our harness, and these are the two T30 that's connected to the heat shield. After that, we'll go ahead and put our two T30s that's going onto the upper portion of the heat shield. All right, so now you're gonna go ahead and put in your reservoir tank, and you're gonna tighten the two T30s on top. And you just got to get that finger tight, well, not finger tight, but ratchet tight. Now, when it's coming back into installing the DMEs, you're going to just go ahead and follow everything in the reverse order. I'm not going to go ahead and put my DMEs in or my airbox because I have a tasty treat where I'm sending the DMEs out to Femto to get unlocked so I can put more power into the car. Well, I appreciate everybody who made it this far into the video. There was a part one, now we're doing part two. But I actually did not show the reinstallation of the airboxes nor the reinstallation of these DMEs. I'm sending these DMEs out to Femto so they can actually be unlocked. That way I can run BM3. And if I believe that I'm supposed to receive probably about 100 horsepower out of it, bringing it up to about 800 or 700 to 800. But you can actually take this video, and if you have any issues with the service bulletin video that I actually posted where BMW will not service it, you can take this video and that way it can show you how to replace those foul injectors, but also too doing your ignition coils and your spark plugs. So if you made it this far, I appreciate everybody who's been watching, and let's go ahead and send these out, and I'll show you the install process plus all the pricing, and that way we can get it done. Once again, I'm bringing all this content for M8s. You can find a ton of videos on M5s, but like I said, people feel more comfortable when you're actually working on something that they actually own, and I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. So let's go ahead and get these out, and I'll show you this in the next video. Thank you.